States.
I know that Anambra has been in the news, for some time now because of the election on November 6th, and the competition is quite high. But in your own words, and from the experience so far, what are your worries concerning the primaries that have just taken place across the political parties that are major?
We thank God that you said across the political parties, because the affliction is not just in the PDP. No legacy is as rich as honesty. Once you miss that legacy of honesty, it's tragic. It's like somebody who is a member of the Redeemed Christian Church and you never met the Redeemer, then you got problems. You have problems. Because what is happening in the PDP, nationwide, is also happening in APC, because you do not know who is APC and who is PDP. I was just looking at, during your newspaper review, somebody, former governor in Imo, jumped into APC. As soon as the EFCC opens your door, say good morning, they jump into from one party to the other. So I pray God that I don't know where the country is moving to. But to answer your question directly, you see that the three major parties in the country have problems in Anambra State. Unfortunately, only the PDP has no official name in INEC. The other parties do, but they're all in court. Very serious court cases, and you don't know how. Maybe some of them might even end up in the Supreme Court. So this is the reference of why I said, if there are party leaderships, or even at the government level, that does not show honesty, dishonesty cannot come. Honesty cannot come out of dishonesty. That is the summary of what is going on among all the parties, because parties have not followed their processes. PDP, for instance, and their crisis started since 2017. There was a Congress in 2017 that had the wards and the local government, and the state never did their own. Later, a caretaker was appointed. They went to court and had a judgment legitimizing them as the official party. And after that, they accepted to be a caretaker again. So you see, this problem has given rise to all these court actions you're now seeing. And we're having judgment from courts of coordinate jurisdiction. So I don't know how INEC is looking at it.
But isn't this a failure of the political parties themselves to do their homework properly?
But this is why
this crisis had been there even before we got to this point. So it was apparent that this was going to happen.
This was why I said that the legacy, the greatest legacy you can leave behind is that of honesty. Because this would have been the best national executive of the PDP. Why? My friend Uche Secondus had been state chairman of party, zonal vice chairman, national organizing secretary, deputy national chairman, and chairman of the party now. Nothing is left. Nobody should teach him how to manage the party. But if you ask me, has the PDP been properly managed? No. If he is honest himself and everybody around you is a crook, then, if when you pass through a place, something misses, but that thing that is missing is not in your pocket, there must be somebody collecting it from somewhere. Because the PDP, for instance, the kind of money that passed through on the 26th of July when we had our, if not for P2B, I would have collapsed. I've never seen anything like that, because I drove with him in his car to the primary ground, and you see dollars being shared shamelessly, openly.
Wait a minute, which primary are you talking about now?
The 26th of the last primary. I'm just coming, you just asked me a question about the Anambra primary. I have never seen, from my Bond hotel, as early as 5 o'clock, 5:30, I asked one or two friends, I wouldn't mention their names. Somebody called me and said, we should come down and see what is going on. And people we are using talks to carry money, 2 million, 3 million. Somebody from my ward came home with almost 17 million. And I was asking, whom finally did you vote for? He said, Oga, I voted for my family. Thank God that I went for this primary. And most of the people who spend that level of stupid money had less than 5 votes. They're less than 5 votes. So why actually were they giving out this money? What was the purpose? What were the assurances you had to give out this money? So at the end of the day, somebody won.
Yes.
I don't want to go into the detail of how that person won, but somebody won. I would have expected a national party, knowing fully well what passed through, to have called all the major contestants and major honest stakeholders to sit down and discuss the way forward. Now, so many groups are in court. Legitimately. Legitimately. one would have expected if there was a meeting to discuss this problem, because this would have been the best chance of PDP winning back Anambra State. Because the government in the state now has not performed wonderfully well in the second term.
But Chief Dan, I mean, you're very correct when you say that people are legitimately in court, because it also seems that a lot of the combatants will not blink an eyelid till the legal processes are done and are gotten through it. However, a lot of critics are saying that, looking at what's happening in Anambra State, they might go the way of Imo State by the Supreme Court. Do you suspect that might be the case?
How do you mean go the way of the Supreme Court?
I mean, in deciding who should be the next governor of the state, because of all the cases that are going. I mean, we saw what happened, from the pre-election matters, post-election matters. How are you worried about that?
The difference between the one in Imo and Anambra now is that all the parties were in contention in Imo. They all went for election. As of now, PDP has no candidate. So it might be, nobody knows what is going to happen before the election. If somebody wins, there'll be an appeal court judgment today or tomorrow, reference to one part of the appeal in Anambra. If it authorizes that a candidate be named and others went on to the Supreme Court, you see that the matter is unfinished until the Supreme Court judgment comes out. So this is why I said, if the present party had organized well to call everybody, there's nobody there. I've been state chairman of NRC and PDP in Anambra State. So I have, with due humility, I have some little authority to say that 80% of those in active practice, in politics, in all the parties, have worked with me in one form or the other. So I can sit down and tell you, this is the pattern of behavior of this person. This is how this person will behave under these circumstances. But as I speak, nobody has called me. Nobody has called all my former colleagues who were chairmen in that state. And people are going to court. They are just calling one person, promise him that, call this person, promise him that. That's not how to organize a party and run an election.
So you think there's a leadership deficit at the national level?
Complete leadership deficit. Why? You know why? So much money has been taken from all these contestants that they are ashamed now to call them, to even talk to them. That is the critical matter. When between Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we had a congress, more than 2 billion Naira would have been spent. On that 76th, I was standing like this with former governor of Anambra State, and a particular contestant, aspirant, was sharing dollars. People were giving $2,000, $3,000 in the field there. Shamelessly, they were sharing dollars. And that person had less than 5 votes. So you will ask, if he was honest that he was running for governorship of Anambra State, sharing what was the purpose of sharing dollar? Because to give money at that level, you must have a conclusion, some honest conclusion that we are going to win.
Absolutely.
But if somebody spends that kind of money, what are you going to do with the state treasury?
That's another very crucial, critical matter which we'll discuss, because that still falls into the context of the electoral reforms which the National Assembly is trying to tinker with, and which people observing are saying, well, you're not doing a good job to ensure that you don't monetize the process so much. But let's still talk about the PDP and the process leading up to it. Was it possible that the PDP at the national level would have come? Because when we saw the number of aspirants for that governorship ticket, it was just a ticking bomb. How do you manage that number of people? Most of them with very deep pockets. Was it possible also that leadership would have said, okay, guys, let's meet and work out a consensus arrangement that would have at least ensured that people don't spend money when it's clear that they won't get the ticket at the end of the day?
You see, I said, if you attend a particular church and you have not met the Redeemer, you got a problem. If you have a process that before you run for an election in the PDP or any other party, that you must spend a minimum of 2 years in that party, why give, that's what they call it,
waivers.
A waiver. Why give a waiver for an office as governor or president of a country? You wait, stay where you are anywhere in the world and make money and just jump in and start sharing money. Of all those that ran for that primary, 3 people stood out. Uche Secondus, she had a reference point. She said, Senator, if you go to Anambra Central, nobody will tell you that she's performing.
Nobody will tell you that
she's performing.
That she's performing.
Yes, she's performing in all forms. Chris Azubog, nobody will tell you that she's performing across the state. Across the state. And Senator Gochukwuba, when he was a senator, did his little best. But there are people who just jumped out, distributing money. So we know them because they were distributing money. Because if you're going to a public office, you should be making reference. When I was this, I did this. When I was this, I did this. You don't tell me when because you built a house, because you did this. That is not a reference point. And you see, the unfortunate thing, I told one of them in the field, I don't want to call any of their names, because a lot of them came to me where I was standing. I said, "Okay, I know you won't take money, but support us." I said, "You're not going to win." I told most of them, because we did something in that field to make sure that they do not come up. For Val Ozigbo to come up, something happened in that field. We had to move delegates from one of the very visible contestants who would have won to move to him to stop 1 or 2 billionaires who thought that they were buying up the state. And I said it won't happen. And as soon as I finished it, I told P2B I was going back to my hotel, and I went back, and they all failed. But you see, what is agonizing about that process was they were encouraged by people who had been ministers, former this, national this of party, this, former that, took so much money. One of them now is being asked to return an armored plated vehicle that they gave him. So you don't know whom they are working for. They take from this person, take from this person. Up to today, they can't come to Anambra. Ashamed. And you pretend that you're a Christian.
It's quite tragic, Chieftain Ulasi, because, I mean, this is a party that is in opposition.
Yes.
A lot of people would have expected they would do things differently.
Yes.
As a party in opposition, as a party planning for a crucial election, not just in Anambra, but also 2023 elections. And when you hear stories like this, and the behavior which really hasn't changed much from what a lot of people perceive the PDP to be, I mean, what are the prospects, if any?
I'll be playing God if I anticipate a process now. But what I think they should have done, yesterday I was with P2B, we were just talking, I said, if the National does not call a meeting, call a meeting. We accept you as a, I mean, he was a governor that performed in Anambra State. You cannot take that away from him. Up to the point he left, he was still very honest. I don't know how many people he will call a meeting in Anambra today and they will not attend. If he, at least people see him as being neutral. If he brings us some neutrality in him, we will listen to him and we'll take his advice. Because it appears the National have eaten beyond the control of factors that they cannot talk to anybody anymore. They can't talk to anybody. And all the Anambra politicians, Abuja-based politicians, who have not voted in the past 3 or 4 elections in Anambra State, they just intimidate and bamboozle aspirants, take money from them and stay back in Abuja. Most of them come from my ward. They have not voted in the past 3 or 4 elections, but they are here delivering candidates. But you know, God is ever merciful. All the people they took money from, they all failed. So their faces were on the ground as they were leaving the voting point, shamelessly leaving the ground.
Okay, let's talk about, I mean, you've mentioned so emphatically here about the role of money in politics,
yes.
You know, money politics. Someone said it was a shame because they were looking up to PDP to give, you know, that, you know, some sort of succor from the primaries, you know, towards the election on November 6th. 2 candidates, 2 parallel primary elections led by 2 factions. I mean, somebody said, you know, we would have thought that PDP will frontline the process, but it's quite very, very obvious that the competition is stiff. But then again, you have said money and the use of money during elections. How do you ever think we can get rid of that? Do you think we can end money politics? Because because that is the root of all of this.
You know, as a Christian, I was taught that the poor is happy when the righteous is in government. If the righteous is in leadership, the poor is happy. This is why I said that if you are a good church person, it might just be a good church person, but have you met the Redeemer? When you meet the Redeemer, I will not afford but to tell both of you the truth, because I cannot sleep well if I don't tell you the truth. If there are 9 candidates running for an for primary in Anambra, and I, as whatever position I hold, even if I don't hold a position in the party, but I'm a prominent citizen that should be able to advise, and I take money from all the 9 of you, tell me the truth, I will tell anybody. What truth comes out of it than the situation that we're now seeing in Anambra State of dishonesty, disenchantment. Nobody now has courage to call anybody because they can't look at their faces and tell them anything. They take their money, and money, we're not talking about 20, 40, or 50. We are talking of hundreds of millions of naira. Serious money, because these boys who came in from America, came in with terrible money. And between today and tomorrow, you see that 2 or 3 of them are moving to other parties. One is going to Zenith, what is it, Zenith Labour Party. It was confirmed to me yesterday. One is going to Naira. 2 or 3 of them are moving. And they are moving with most of their supporters. At least they have some support.
So that completely weakens the base of
that
the PDP.
completely weakens the base of the party. That was why I said initially, if we had good party leadership that was honest, they would have called everybody together and appealed to them. Because these people who lost, and if they moved out, supposing they were the ones who won, will the other aspirants leave them and move to other parties? But because of the experiences they passed through, because of the amount of money extorted from them, they now feel that this party is not
I thought there was an
them.
accord before the primary that whatever happens, we band together, in quotes.
I like how he said it in quotes. Tell me, who keeps an accord? Who?
Why shouldn't they when they make them?
Because the basis of the accord does not exist. When you have polluted the system, when you have corrupted the system, you cannot place honesty on top of dishonesty. It does not work. That was the foundation I laid. If those people were running for primaries honestly on a clean platform, but ab initio, people at the different levels promise them, we must deliver you. And you know why? In that hall, that's why we started the voting very late. Names were being changed. It was only statutory delegates. And having been chairman of, I knew whom the statutory delegates were. It is not a difficult thing to know. Chief P2B wrote petitions. I called a couple of people at the national. I said, these names are not statutory delegates. They will remove 19 in this minute. The next minute, they add extra 20 from the national. Trying to satisfy those they have taken money from. It is despicable to tell you what happened at Awka. That this party, PDP, after being in government 16 years and lost out, does not think of 1923.
No, exactly.
This would have been a basis of trying to make a clean way for the future.
Absolutely,
Yes.
Chief, because a lot of people will say, if we can see the PDP, going down the downward trail in the primaries, what is the future for the PDP in 2023, especially looking at the internal party mechanism? I mean, you've seen at the national level the conversation of, Secondus to be or not to be, the internal, plot to remove him or to leave him. So how do you think that the PDP can get its acts together if the failure of the leadership is not looked at?
Only one thing can happen now. We have 1 or 2, 3 governors who are courageous, fairly honest. The Rivers governor is very courageous. Enugu governor is very courageous. I want them to look beyond the southeast and south-south and see how they can gather governors to, in the next 2, 3, 4 days, start talking with people. Or else it will be tragic. It will be terribly tragic.
What will be their message to this?
Their message is, come together. There's somebody who will call even when you're very aggrieved. And after talking to you, you will have hope. You will say, okay, because of you, I will do this.
But then Tipe mentioned the accord before, the coming together, and you said that the accord was bound to fail. Do you think that these messages will
because
also
the accord
work?
has failed, there is no situation that has no, remedy. It depends on who is talking to you. If somebody you trust and believe that is telling you the truth talks to you, like if Enugu governor talks to me today, that I will do 9 out of 10 things he tells me. I live with him in Enugu, and I know he's a straightforward guy. I know a Rivers governor. From the time he was running for his primary, he had problems. He had to call me on the phone. I never met him, but what he complained was correct, and I changed it because I was national secretary of the screening panel, of the appeal panel for PDP governorship when he ran for his first term. So we have examples to show that if you are honest, I was chairman of the panel that screened the whole of the Northeast in 2010. And all those governors passed through me. When Okwesile Nwodo was chairman of the party, they had to ask Okwesile to send me to do their various congresses. And the party told them, they cannot split me into 5 or 6. So I had to do that of Dankwambo. So what I'm saying that you can get something from somewhere, but first be honest. Give everybody a level playing field so that when somebody loses, he will be so satisfied that he lost that he need not complain. But not when he knows that you are doing mago-mago to make sure that he does not come up. How would that accord work? Because accord was based on honesty. That if there is a free and fair primary, I will accept it.
So who do you honestly say is your candidate within this PDP rankings?
I wasn't talking about being candidate. I was talking of somebody who, or those who have the capability because of their reference point to win. There are two of them, first and foremost, or three of them, Ugochukwu, Krista Azubogu, and Uche Secondus, because these are party people who have gone through the crucible of development. Party people know them. Either when they were senators or as presently constituted, and I continue talking of Uche Secondus and Krista, come to my state. 80% of women will vote for Uche Secondus. She did not start doing that because she is now a senator. She started doing that even when she was a bank manager. Krista Azubogu did not start working because he just turned out in the House of National Assembly. He's been doing that, going beyond the local government. And the party people know him. So my worry now, if we don't have this kind of meeting I'm talking about to appease most party people, Val Ozigbo, very nice guy. Very nice guy. But most party people at the local level may not have related to him as to have confidence that if this person wins, we have hope.
Probably because he hasn't held it.
Probably because politics is local.
And
that
and
you're
also
working
probably he
because
hasn't held any political position.
He hasn't held any political position. And therefore,
to spend the kind of money that Secondus and the rest
but
are
there are very many big people backing him too, we know. He's not just like the others. He's not at the level of the three tops, but he's better than Krista Azubogu and Uche Secondus because there are people backing him. He tried. He muzzled himself through. They would have all failed if we didn't do the magic we did at the last minute. But I was happy we did that magic and he emerged. Very humble guy. All we needed was to have a meeting to harmonize everybody's interest. And on we go.
All right, Chief Ulasi, let's move beyond the PDP and also talk about the other parties in contention for Anambra. Abga, for instance, also has problems similar to the PDP. 3 candidates were thrown up after in different primaries. And this, incidentally, is a party that holds control of the state at the moment. How do you see that playing out as well?
Well,
for them?
You know, Abga has a fundamental problem in Anambra. You don't know whether the governor is in charge or the wife is in charge. If it was clear to me who was in charge, it would have been easier. If not, tell me how a sitting government publicly supporting former governor of Central Bank, it was not a hidden factor, that could not put the name of Soludo into INEC. There must be something serious happening.
But that was beyond his control.
No,
at least for the Abga he controls, the faction of which he controls. Why don't you see what I'm saying?
Okay, go ahead. If I'm governor of a state and I want to make you, Omariam, a candidate, I know how. I won't work it out by being noisy, by boasting. There are ways of doing things. Like I said, when I was chairman, Ezife was governor in SDP. I defeated him in 2 elections. 1 state election and 1 federal election. You have to get down to the grassroots to work. And if you don't have the humility, the arrogance, you know, the worst arrogance is that of literate arrogance or illiterate arrogance. Because I'm governor, I can do it. I can put anybody. And people are now telling you, and unfortunately, they forget that Anambra is probably one of the richest states in the country, where there are many billionaires who live and work without minding what the government does. They are not interested. They're absolutely not interested. If government puts 1 billion, they put 2. I was just telling you what happened at the PDP primary.
Yes.
If I hadn't strong heart, I would collapse. I've never seen where money was being $2,000, $3,000, not Naira. And people were just walking away. So if the governor of Anambra State, as Abga, did not know how to organize his succession, that was terrible. And you went on screening and disqualified. What would be the reason of disqualifying somebody who is in the House of Assembly or National Assembly? That was stupid.
But then again, you hear INEC say that the party has no factions, indicating that it recognizes the one led by Mr. Oye, a loyalist of the incumbent governor, which you just mentioned. Yeah. And it says, as far as INEC is concerned, there are no factions in AGBA. The commission deals with only 1 national chairman and 1 secretary. Now, again, you look at the role of INEC in decisions. How do you see it as one of the conflicts that happens within the political party wranglings as well? What is the role?
You can now see the aberrations we have in this country is such that if you don't have a strong mind, you go crazy. Look at the problems with electronic transmission. I think it was your network that was showing decisions taken by INEC a few years ago, a few months ago, and what the same INEC is saying today. to their staff or something. So there are things you don't bet, you know, just like we're talking about having a consensus or some agreeing that if this person wins, we support. Nothing works in this country because there's no truth. And I said that you cannot base this truth on dishonesty. Yeah. There has to be a fundamental basis of acceptance that this is white, and we all agree that it's white. If it's going to be black, let the three of us here agree that this black is now white. The problem in Nigeria is that the three of us agree that what she's wearing is black. And we live here. Omar start telling me that it's now white, and you want me to accept it. And because you have some advantages, you enforce it to everybody that it is white. And Nigerians agree because you're spreading money. So the idea of consensus is difficult. I would have expected the governor of Anambra State to call all his aspirants and tell them why.
Including the factions.
Including the factions. Before they went into that election, there was no faction. Nobody knew publicly that there was a problem of who was indeed the national chairman of ABGA. And if INEC recognized Oye as the national chairman of ABGA, one would have expected that those names should have been in there. So why is it Umoji's name that, how did Umoji's name get in there? Because the person who is the national chairman of the factional section is now being authenticated by the court. That is the proper chairman. That was why INEC accepted his name, because they are forced to obey court orders when it is convenient for them. But in this situation, they are forced to obey. So I think they're in a worse mess than the PDP, to be honest with you.
If the two, I've even talked about the APC as well. Well, Andy Uba seems to be on the front line at the moment. But with all the intrigues playing out, do you see something happening in Anambra 2021 similar to what happened in Imo in 2011 when an underdog came from a different political, I think it was PP at that time, Ikedio Hakim, emerged governor unexpectedly. Well, some people would say expectedly because the PDP had issues and the other party at the time also had issues. Well,
the Imo one was not unexpected because we were also part of the front that did it. He just didn't emerge and the Holy Spirit delivered him, no. There were elements, factional elements in PDP and other parties that said, come out. And they made people to vote for him.
He knew his redeemer.
So that is likely. Do you see that likely playing out here as well?
It is likely. It could play out. It is likely to play out in Anambra.
But would it affect the factor of the ABGA, which for many people in Anambra State has always been, this is our own. So whatever comes out of it,
you know the conflict. I'm happy you raised this question. If before Ojukwu died, it was the theory of Nkabunkai, this is our own. And the proponent of that theory was Peter Obi after Ojukwu left. 8 years after his governorship, he had left this is our own. He's now in PDP. So how then, and this is a man loved by so many people in Anambra, how do you justify this is our own? Because he's now telling you that this is our own, this is local thing, is not working.
But the party still won the second term.
We need to bring the rest of the Southeast to the national playing ground. That at this local level is not going to benefit anybody. We need to go at the national level. So the theory of this is our own. It's not finding favor with a lot of...
But was it not reinforced during the second term victory of this current governor?
No, it wasn't reinforced. Because if you remember, I was on this your channel severally and on this your network and channels television. Because that time, a candidate was brought out from ABGA into PDP, and we said, no, we won't accept it. And because we said, no, we won't accept it, we walked against the party. That's probably likely what is going to happen again. I tell them, you do what you want, and we will use the grassroots to do what we want and what we think is right. Because as soon as that candidate was brought out, without consultations with anybody, I was on television, I said, we will not accept it. And I told the National Party, we will not accept it. And we campaigned for this present governor for his second term. All the big shots in PDP campaigned for him, and he won. And the other people failed woefully. They didn't even come third. So this is why I'm appealing to, there is nothing like dialogue. Dialogue is the basis of any discussion. When you see agitation, agitations are catalysts for dialogue. But in this country, no. It is catalyst for dictatorship, for telling that I'm this, you can't do this, I have money, you have no position. Who is Umara? Who is Adora? And at the end of the day, they will know who is Adora, they will know who is Umara. Especially if you have a relationship with the grassroots.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They will know whom you are.
But that's exactly why.
But that time, you know why they have an advantage? Because they are multimillionaires having extracted money So they are not losing anything. As far as their interest is money, and they have made the money. And you see governance move into the hands of people you cannot predict anymore, people you cannot hold accountable. That is the problem, not just in Anambra, in all the states in the country. It's a big problem.
But again, I get what Otibe is trying to say, because that generic slang, nkabo, this is our own, is a localized, feel good factor for political party members and followers, especially in the Awka. And it has come to become a toga of even the ordinary citizen, in Anambra State, to think that this is our own, which is an Igbo parlance. How do you also rule that out of the equation? Because whether you like it or not, it has become a growing personality within the common
You know why it
space.
is very simple. I just gave example of P2B and this in kind. There are so many of those this is in kind who have moved into PDP, or moved into Labour Party, or moved into YPP. So if I call a meeting in my village, and yesterday I was saying this is in kind, I call the same people. Say, my brothers and sisters, what I saw yesterday is no more true. That 419 is not our own. You're talking to your people. And these are people who believe in you.
But you can't really
predict.
predict.
If there are 10 of them, 5 or 6 might believe you because of what you have been for them over time. Especially if you were in the house or you were a governor. You tell me that P2B calls meeting in an Usher local government where he comes from and people will not listen to him. Anybody telling you that because of this is in kind? He was the proponent of this is in kind, and he will give you reasons why this is in kind has failed. And most people will believe it. Because this is in kind is being said by people. People developed it for a particular purpose, with a political advantage, because that was Ojukwu's theory. But that theory changed after Ojukwu visited Buhari in Daura. I discussed that issue on this your network. Because part of my problem with Buhari is that every agreement he reached with Ojukwu, he hasn't kept one. Not one.
All right. Chief, before we move to talk about the Nnamdi Kanu issue, let's quickly conclude with the PDP and what's left of the life of the PDP as you count down to 2023. Is it possible to be salvaged? Right now we're hearing dissolve the NWC, set up a caretaker committee, plan for the next convention. What do you think can work? Because there's nothing that seems to suggest that the current leadership of the NWC, led by Secondus, is ready to step down. Everything seems to indicate that, yeah, he's thinking about moving ahead, even when the profile of the party is dropping. I mean, you're losing governors. You're losing governors, are defecting to other parties. I mean, critical elections such as this, there's no proper organization, it's chaos totally. How do you salvage the party? Is it possible to be salvaged before the intrigues of 2023? Because by 2022, there will be no governors. Everything will be about politics of 2023. How do you solve this? Because you have an issue to solve max 2021 before you get into 2022. How do you deal with that?
It's a fundamentally very difficult question. It requires the help of the Holy Spirit.
Why?
If there is political Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit of the Christ I know will not get involved with dishonesty. Certainly you will not find the Holy Spirit coming from Jesus Christ to be involved. And if this executive is not ready to tell itself the truth, it will not be salvaged, cannot be salvaged, but to be removed. The only short tell about it is to be, if they won't resign, look at the number of governors moving out of their parties, top politicians in PDP moving into APC, not justifiably, selfishly. But let's not discuss whether it is their
sorry, let me come in here because yes. There was a PDP governors forum that was held in Bauchi a few days ago.
Meeting, yeah.
Yes, and from the communique that was released, the chairman did come out to say that the defections that happened was as a result of the arm twisting of the APC, of their governors using tools and mechanisms. And, Utibi has rightly said that we have a gale of defection, whether PDP wants to deny it or not. But do you think that it's as a result of internal party mechanism or
external
factors?
Why I don't, as a Christian, I don't like name calling or stigmatizing people. If with due humility, I have said this on your network. Since I started politics, I have never given, I have never received 1 naira. I stay here and say things that may not be good about the president, but they are painful truth. And I said, if what I have said is not true, send me to court. Take me to EFCC. In all my life, how many governors in this country will say that they have never given or received? This money that is stolen is kept somewhere, received somewhere. And the government knows. There's nothing that happens anywhere the government does not know. If they want to deal with you, they will deal with you. So if you're an APC governor or PDP and you open your mouth too much and they give you an example of where you are coming from, most of them don't jump across board. And you see that as soon as you leave PDP and jump into APC, that's the end of the matter. The EFCC will stop investigating you unless ones they want to use as an example. So the whole system is corrupt. So how can the governors be saying that when they know the truth? They know the truth. How many of them? Not many of them. In all those governors that converged in Abaushi, I can swear for about 3 or 4 of them. Others cannot open their mouth and challenge Buhari. And if Buhari wants to deal with them, he will give them examples both in APC and PDP.
But they have immunity.
Well, for now, they have immunity for now.
That's why I'm wondering whether the argument really sells. But
no, you have immunity.
Chief,
the blackmail immunity is not immune from blackmail.
All right, Chief.
The government can afford to tell you what you are doing.
Great.
And people will lose hope in you.
Let's just take a pause because you still have to respond to what next, the salvage question for the PDP, and take a short break, and we'll be back. Chief Dan Ulasi is still our guest. Thank you very much for still being there with us. Chief Dan Ulasi, political analyst, still here with us in the studio. Now we're looking at the survival of the PDP up till 2023 and beyond. Not just survival, making an impact. And we're looking at the NWC to remain or not to remain. If it's not to remain, how do you get it out in a safe manner that doesn't create crisis, the kind of crisis we saw during when this man was brought in, Ali Modu Sharif, that got into a protracted legal dispute that dragged the party many years behind. How do you salvage it? Let's go back to that salvage question.
You know, the part of honor. If you came to office through a godfather or godfathers, and midway you fall foul of the processes of your godfatherism, honestly or dishonestly, then you have a problem. It is for you to honestly tell yourself the truth. In this journey, how far am I going? You know, do I destroy the house just to make a point? Because Secondus, for instance, everybody in this country knew that he became national chairman through Uche. They spent hundreds of millions with shattered flights going around the country for him to be. You know, he wasn't the only one who was interested in that office. He used to be a very close friend of mine, very, very close. Now he became national chairman. But recently I read what Uche said publicly against him. Unfortunately, I didn't know he would go. Something must have happened to make him go public to that extent. If I were Secondus, I would resign. In all honesty.
So at what point do you think the bomb was severed?
I wouldn't know. Because since Secondus became national chairman, I've not sat with him to discuss. People said I would have been the next closest person to him. But I don't want to go into that detail. I've not sat down to discuss with him because for personal reasons, I stayed clear. If a friend is in government and you don't call me, I won't bother you. I won't call you on the phone. I won't do anything. Yeah. If you want me to do anything and you call me, it's a one gift I thank God for every day is contentment. If you're moving with helicopter and I'm moving with keke, we'll get to the same point. My cloth might be dirty when I come out of the vehicle, but I will get wherever you've gotten to. So to come to your question directly, if I were in his shoes, looking at his background and the processes that brought him to where he is, in terms of party management, it's just like when you become president of a country, there's nothing else you want, unless you want to be God. He's now the national chairman of a party. There's nothing else for him to offer. So if those who originally contrived the idea to bring him forward now say no, we feel for reasons, because I saw where the governor said he's a liar. I mean, for a governor to say that a national chairman of a party is a liar, that's a very serious accusation.
But Chief Dan Ulasi, you know that is very unlikely because we are almost out of time.
What I'm saying is that if my name is returned to that level of lack of trust for somebody who helped me to get into somewhere, and I'm not able to convince him why he should think otherwise, and he's now organizing governors to be against me. my integrity becomes very paramount.
But the question I wanted to ask is...
to salvage the party is either they resign or the governors meet and decide with stakeholders what to do to salvage the party.
Resignation is, for many people, would be very unlikely because you just talked about what happened in Anambra State.
Yes.
So much money flowing somewhere.
Yes.
And typical Nigerians are not the type to walk away from that kind of money.
That's true.
But you also find a situation where Secondus himself may be urged on to stay on by persons who feel that their 2023 ticket is assured. Powerful persons within the party. So do you think with those powerful persons urging him on, he's likely going to listen to whatever the governor say, or do you see a likely clash between two interests? One interest being the people who are assured of 2023 ticket, whether at the presidential level, with Secondus on the seat as national chairman, or the governors who feel he needs to get out, for them to also put somebody who works towards their
if he does not
interests.
get out on his own volition, it's just a confirmation that there will be an APC government come 2023. That is the summary of it.
You know, this is quite clear. What you said.
It will be very unfortunate, but that's all because only the PDP can offer a fight. And if there's this serious division coming up, as we are seeing it now, then there's no hope.
States.